The Big Issue, breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello there, welcome to The Big Issue, your current affairs program on Leadership Television. We apologize for bringing this program a little behind schedule. We're experiencing some technical glitches. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. Of course, we have a virtual guest joining us. He's a public affairs analyst, a TV host, and a syndicated columnist, Jide Ojo. On today's The Big Issue, we are looking at 25 years of democracy, how far and how well. These are the question, or this is the question we are going to be posing answers to on today's edition of your program, The Big Issue. In June 2018, former President Muhammadu Buhari declared June 12 as the new date for the celebration of Nigeria's democracy. The decision was to posthumously honor MKO Abiola, the presumed winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. And since then, the Democracy Day has been celebrated on June 12. Incidentally, today is June 12, Democracy Day. Jide Ojo, it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure too. Happy Democracy Day.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, okay, we are still experiencing some technical glitches there, but we hope to hook up with them as soon as it's rectified. Don't go away, stay tuned. Technical glitches we were experiencing, but we are back on now, and the program is The Big Issue. We are looking at Democracy Day, 25 years of democracy, how far and how well. My name is Winifred Ugbebo once again, and of course, like I said earlier, we have virtual guests joining us, Jide Ojo. Jide, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Winifred. Happy Democracy Day.
Like I said earlier, before the new date, democracy was celebrated annually on May 29. However, many are of the view that the democratic ethos of freedoms, equality, and inclusion has been usurped by despair, acute poverty, and crushing hopelessness. Today is Democracy Day, 25 years of democracy. How far and how well? These are the issues we are going to be looking at and posing questions to on today's The Big Issue. Jide?
Well, I'm of the considered view that as the president went historic in his National Day broadcast, we may not have much to cheer, but we should thank God that we have survived for 25 uninterrupted years, 7 electoral cycles, and at least we have been able to keep the military at bay, unlike the first, second, and third republic. The First Republic did not go beyond 5 years. 5 years and approximately less than 5 years, October 1, 1960 to January 15, 1966. And then the Second Republic from October 1, 1979 to December 31, 1983. The Third Republic started in maybe 1991 to 1993, June 23. So this is the longest we have had in our democratic journey. So democracy is a work in progress. We are not where we ought to be, but we are not where we used to be. Of course, as you ask the question, how far and how well, we could do better, we could fare better, but I mean, we are alive and the country is still united, even though there are centrifugal and centripetal forces, at work. We still have on our hands IPOB agitation. Recently, we have the Yoruba Nation agitators in the southwest. The Niger Deltas are still clamoring for resource control. But these are just part of the manifestation of the shortcomings and shortfalls of democracy. So, to the extent that we are still one indivisible country, and we have had 7 electoral cycles, and you and I still enjoy largely civil, what we consider as civil liberties. I think we can congratulate ourselves on this democracy day celebration. But it's still a long way it's not yet to Uhuru. It's still a long way to freedom, because aside from just having the pillars of democracy, uh, or what we otherwise call institutions of democracy, like political parties, the electoral management body, the civil society organization, the, the judiciary, the legislature, the security agencies, and even the media. We know that if we drill down each of these pillars of democracy, uh, they still need to be strengthened, because these pillars, though 25 years after, they are still largely very weak and have not been able to deliver sterling performances.
All right, thank you so much. In your column today in The Punch, you also highlighted the issue of our electoral system, which is so flawed, marked with violence and vote buying, inducement or financial inducement. So going forward, because that is the center cause of democracy, what can actually be done to bridge this gap?
Well, what I did in my column in The Punch today is to clinically analyze the journey thus far,
Yes, you did.
and as I call this, my own reminiscences about how things have been in the last 25 years. And the last 3 weeks, I've been looking at individual institutions. Last week, I talked about 25 years of democracy. The week before, I talked about the wobbling democracy of Bola Tinubu. So it's to say that if we take, like the president said in his speech this morning, he said you can have elections without having democracy, but you cannot have democracy without having election. I hope you heard him say that. So what that means is that our case is like we have elections, but we don't have democracy. Professor Claudake of blessed memory said some decades ago that we have in Nigeria, we are running democracy without Democrats. And I put the blame largely at the doorstep of the political elite of this country, many of whom are more interested in lining their pockets and vying for their own personal aggrandizement than deepening of democracy. Many of them have undermined the electoral process. And if it is a country where law actually are obeyed, some of them should not be sitting in those hallowed chambers or in the government houses because they shot their way to victory. In my column, I talked about the winner takes all syndrome of our electoral process, where by virtue of even as slimmest margin, somebody wins everything and then somebody loses everything. Just imagine how much Atiku Abubakar has invested into his political uh,
Yes, career.
enterprises. Uh, for the past 6 attempts he has made, he has spent billions of naira at each elections, but it has not resulted in electoral victory for him. And he has to lick his wound and wait for another 4 years. And that's why election is seen as a zero-sum game. Is nobody wants
Do or die
to
affair.
lose, particularly if you're among the gladiators, the frontline candidates, the real contenders. They want to put everything in the arsenal to make sure that they emerge victorious. And that's why we saw what we witnessed during the last elections, issues of voter intimidation, issue of inducement of electorate, issues around even political assassination. Like I
Yes.
pointed out a case in point in Enugu State,
Enugu.
we are
Mm.
3 days to the last year's senatorial election on the 22nd of February. The Labour
Labour
Party
Party
candidate
candidate.
Oyibo Chukwu was assassinated with outside with 5 of his supporters. Why was he assassinated? Just because he was seen as as the man to beat, and that if they allowed him to contest that election, he was going to defeat all the other candidates. Unfortunately, I'm not sure his murderers, his killers have been fished out. But
They
suffice
haven't.
to say that that is the nature and character of Nigerian politics. It's politics of pulling down, pull out down, politics of the survival of the strongest, not the fittest. It's survival of the strongest, and strongest here does not mean strength. We are talking of deep pockets. You must have uh, huge war chest to contest elections in Nigeria. I mean, imagine having to spend close to 250 million, 500 million to win House of Representatives seat. People spending billions to become senator. How will you not recoup that investment? I mean, former Senate President of the Senate, Adolphus Wabara, in one of the media interviews he granted, I think he granted Sunday Punch many years ago. He actually duly acknowledged that some of them sell their properties to contest elections. And since they are not running a charity organization, they must recoup
They
their
have to
investment
recoup.
because they see politics as an investment. So if they have to recoup their investment, they just must win at all cost. So there's no more spirit of sportsmanship of, okay, if I don't win, I will congratulate the winner. And that's why even when elections have been won and lost at the ballot, at the collation center or at the polling unit, you still see almost a year plus litigations, particularly if it's governorship election. Uh,
Yes.
Governorship election litigation starts from the tribunal, it moves on to Court of Appeal, and it gets to Supreme Court. Now, at the tribunal, it spends 180 days, which is 6 months. At the Court of Appeal, 60 days. That's if you have 60 to 180, that's already like 200 and 220. Then you have another 60 days at the Supreme Court, which is 260. So you are spending like almost a year contesting the outcome of a governorship
Of the
election.
elections.
And the array of lawyers that are hired to slug it out at the court, you see very intimidating array of lawyers,
Size.
senior advocates of Nigeria. Some will parade as many as 5 senior advocates and scores of other lawyers. These are people who are not working pro bono. In fact, we do refer in my sector, which is the development sector, we refer to the election season as the cocoa season, the harvest season for lawyers, because that's the time they charge highly their clients who want to go to tribunal. And so when you add all of the costs that you need to spend to emerge victorious at the election, you find out that a little wonder where we have underdevelopment, because there is a very thin nexus. There's a nexus between every political expenditure and corruption.
Government. Yes.
Somebody will spend, let's even assume that you spend 1 billion to become a senator, and you have only 4 years. Even if you are earning 1 million naira per month, multiply that by 36, that's 36 million. Multiply that by 4. Does that give you up to 1 billion? Will you not spend? Your constituents will still be looking at you to come and bail them out. Their children that is sick, their mother that died, that they need to do the funeral. All manner of requests will still be coming your way. So at the end of the day, when you see on the underdevelopment as a result of our civil rule, it's as a result of heavy investment in politics because of the high cost of electioneering, high cost of politics. So, and that is our history, our trajectory, that unless we are able to bring down substantially the cost of elections and the cost of politics, people of ideas will never even be able to smell electoral victory. Look at what happened in the case of Plateau. People won elections at the ballot, but they were technically denied victory by the court for certain, whether to say misinterpretation of the law and all of that, until the Supreme Court laid that issue to rest. But unfortunately, those other people, up to senators, House of Reps, State House of Assembly, they do not have the advantage of having to go to the Supreme Court to canvass their
Yes.
case. Only the governor gets up to Supreme Court. So, which is why there is an impasse in the Plateau State House of Assembly today.
Yes.
Because these people won the election as in fact, what I learned is that the margin of win over their opponent is huge,
Yes, it's quite
but
huge.
technical knockout by the judiciary, and that is part of the challenge we have to deal with in our electoral process.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. Unfortunately, time is against us because we're dealing with some technical glitches. Just before we go, I just want to ask you one question. Going forward, how do we deepen democracy in our country? This was on the backdrop of the fact that in this administration, journalists are being hounded by security agents.
Well, issue of deepening democracy is in your hands, is in my hands. We cannot give up on the system or leave the scene to the politicians. I duly understand the fear that the media operating in Nigeria now goes through, particularly with the clampdown on some of our
Yes.
colleagues in the recent past. And the irony of it is that under a civil rule, we have the police on one hand and the military on the other hand, undermining the human rights of these journalists and taking laws into their hand, keeping them for well over the period that is permissible by law. But what the president said this morning is heartwarming. that he stands for democracy, and that even using the labor leaders, the labor unions as an example, that he didn't clamp down on them, unlike what will have happened under the military. There was dialogue, and even when they disagree with government, government crack did not clamp down on them. So the popular saying, Winifred, is that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We cannot give up on this country. We must continue to bring accountability and transparency into governance. Uh, we just must make available to ourselves the institutions like the courts, like the National Human Rights Commission, and even the court of public opinion by speaking out. It is because the Nigerian Union of Journalists and the media organizations that these colleagues belong to, it's because they spoke out that their colleagues eventually got bailed and released. So the good news under democracy is that you can always go to courts to enforce your fundamental human rights. And there is also the National Human Rights Commission, who could also call the military and even the police to order for exercising ultra-vires power. But beyond and above that, that's why there is social media. If you see something, say something. When you escalate this issue and the international community picks it up, you find out that government will be sufficiently embarrassed to say, oh, sorry, we apologize. But the most important thing is that we journalists must also engage in self-sponsorship. We must not also say because we are in a democracy, we can go overboard and report falsehood and then lie and commit libel, because there are clear laws against libel and sedition, and even there are laws against the cyber security laws,
Security.
which we are also subjected to. So we also must first learn to play by the rules, even as we try to hold people in government to account to do the right thing.
All right, thank you so much, Jide. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. So unfortunate that we're experiencing some technical glitches, and we have to come to an end. Draw the curtain on today's the big issue. Well, viewers, this is where we end today's the big issue. We've been talking about 25 years of democracy, how far and how well. And of course, we had the pleasure of having company, though virtually, Jide Ojo. Jide Ojo is a public affairs analyst, a TV host, and a syndicated columnist. My name is Winifred Ubebo. Until I come your way again next time, here's wishing you a beautiful weekend. Bye.
Discover key through education. The culture-rich country of Turkey, which is hosted a myriad of civilizations through the centuries, is a global pollination. Turkey offers various lucrative opportunities